So, hi there, and welcome to the live stream. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to ask a question, if you could kindly type it in the chat with QQQ in front of it so we really see it so clearly. If you want to jump the queue, then you can do a super chat, which will give you priority over everybody else. But also, the most important thing is it supports the channel. So, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you really enjoy the show. If you want to put a comment in, that'd be great too. Anyway, sit back and enjoy the live stream. Hope you enjoy it. And not one person has mentioned my tie in that video, but there you go. How has your day been, Richard?
Yes, all good. You?
Yeah, excellent. I'm having such fun with this continual glucose monitor. And I rolled back the years to 10 years ago. And I want to do a very quick screen share. There were quite a few people joined me on the live last night. It was 250 people were interested in continual glucose monitoring, which surprised me. And I ate a surprise thing last night, and we did a live thing, and I kept showing my phone. I'm not going to show you it now. And we did live monitoring. Anyway, and I tried to get people to guess what I'd eaten, and it was a banana. And boy, did it take my blood glucose up. Anyway, this morning, I am going to screen share now. Rather than get people to guess, I'm just going to show you what I had. So screen share, here we go. And let me get the thing on ready. Right, this is what I had first thing this morning. 40 grams of porridge oats, a very, very small serving. And I want to just add some, what I think is pretty interesting details to this. I used to have that with, well, firstly, a bigger serving. Secondly, with maple syrup, a little bit, or honey, a little bit, because, you know, it's natural and it's really healthy. Or I'd have some blueberries. Anyway, I had 40 grams of that. And I thought, well, I'll just try the oats. I will just try the oats. And my blood glucose shot up, absolutely shot up. You can see, you know, I fast asleep here. It was very good. Down here at 3.9 millimoles. And the porridge oats just made it shoot right up, 7.1 there, which is very high, I think. Don't you? What do you think, Richard? Is that high?
I think it's excessively high. Oats are touted as being one of the health foods, you know, especially from the carb community. What many don't understand is that oats are not only high in carbohydrate, but they're also high in lectins, which are a carbohydrate binding protein, which bind to the insulin receptor and can still elicit an insulin response, which can lead to insulin resistance and fat storage. You know, as we know, when we elicit that insulin response, it breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cell. This is how we store fat. So yeah, from being, I mean, where were you prior to that? I can see that it's a big jump, but what was your baseline reading before you consumed?
When I woke up, I was like 3.9, which is for the Americans, which is about 70 milligrams per deciliter. And well, if we go to five of these, 5 millimoles per liter is just about 85 milligrams per deciliter. So 7.1 is about 120. So it took my blood glucose up from, let's say, 80 to 120 without anything else. It was just those oats, obviously a little bit of milk as well. So you know, that is what I had with some milk.
A baby portion.
Overnight, a baby portion, and it really put my blood glucose up. Last night when I did my live, and I'm going to thank a shout out to Dr. Abs, because he said, you know, we should do more sort of themed stuff. Absolutely. And that was bang on last night when I did the continual glucose monitoring. Guess what I've just eaten thing. I ate a banana and we watched my blood glucose going up, and I actually felt okay. And I'm really gutted that I finished after an hour, because literally 5 minutes after I got off air, and maybe it's doctor theatre, as they say, I felt absolutely wrecked. I felt terrible, absolutely terrible. Now, there are some naysayers out there who will say, well, you're not metabolically flexible. That's such rubbish. What it is there's too much sugar in a banana. It is that simple. It's a hybrid. It's not what bananas used to be like. Anyway, so so you can see the time up there. So 10:18, it was still very high, and then it started to drop. And I do want to go through this because it just dropped and dropped and dropped, as you'd expect, because somebody like me is sort of insulin sensitive. Still reasonably high, still under 100. I mean, 5.2 is something like 90 milligrams per deciliter, and then it got to sort of there is a kicker to this. It's under 80 there, so you can see that actually, you know, I recovered. My body did recover. But here's the thing that people don't talk about with continual glucose monitors. I have a certain amount of blood in me. So I have about 5 to 5.5 liters of blood in me. But my wife would maybe have 4 liters. Now, if she had the same thing, the concentration, this is never talked about, never, ever talked about. The amount of sugar, the concentration in someone with 4 liters, which is a woman compared to a guy, is going to have a higher concentration. So your can of Coke, when you're out as a family, I've got 5 liters of blood. My wife has 4 liters of blood, and my kids are age 10. I'm sorry to say this, Richard, because this is going to ring a little bit true for you. They've got like 2.7 liters on average around age 10. When you have a can of Coke each, that concentration for the kids is so much worse. I mean, it's worse for your wife and even worse for your kids. And nobody talks about this as a factor, and I think it should be. The other thing is food quality. You know, this glucose monitor is not saying, well, that sugar's come from a good source, so we're all right. I'm just letting people see all this. You know, this is consistently good readings, so people can't say, you're probably a bit diabetic. These are all my readings throughout the day. Is anyone bored with it yet? You know, so that's it. That's what I was going to say, is you've got to look at the fact that your body doesn't want this amount of sugar. It just doesn't. I mean, where are we now? We're at about 5:18, 5:15. Yeah. So, you know, I've had a nice day since. If I had fruit and honey, because there's certain people out there that eat this way, but also add fruit and honey, when they do their bloods, they're never as low as that. Never. Consistently very high. Now, a weird thing then happened is, and I hope people are still finding this interesting. I think it's interesting. I'll just stop sharing. Then another thing happened. We went out and we ran into somebody that has they make cakes, and they gifted Jane a cake. And I had three mouthfuls of cake. So I'd gone from that lovely 4.7, and I could just show you on the screen. Can you see the screen there? Can you see that here there's this huge leap up? It went to 9. Honestly, I had 3 very small mouthfuls of cake, homemade cake. Homemade, and I'm saying that because it's not got the really nasty stuff in. And that is what it did. It spiked my blood glucose. Oh, by the way, and there you can see, I've gone back to 5. And I've just eaten a ribeye. So when we talk about continual glucose monitors, yes, it's a good tool, but also they make you very aware of all these things that you're being lied to about. You know, oats, as Richard so brilliantly and eloquently put it. As we know, Richard Smith is an expert on. He's so good. He's on Dr. Chafee's school as an expert guest. All right. So tonight we're going to hear him now. I've rabbited on. He's going to answer, and we've got lots of questions coming in, so that's great. Don't forget the shout out, guys. Really helpful with the channel. I mean, the continual glucose monitor experiment is going to cost me about 100 quid. Just for 2 weeks, you know, the kit and the app. I had to change my phone just to get the app, but it's one of the most accurate, you know. But even doing this, look at this, just in this time, my insulin sensitivity is huge. It's really good. It handles that. And that's the other thing. How much insulin did that spike? You know, a lot of insulin, a little bit of cake and some porridge oats. In the middle of the day, I had pretty substantial ribeye, and that did nothing. That did nothing to my blood sugar. As you saw, it was nice and smooth. So anyway, right. Okay. Hope that made sense. Frank is a new member. Thank you, Frank. Big supporter, and that's really great. Let's have a look. Another Sunday Live. No big news to report this week, but my blood glucose levels are showing a declining trend. Perhaps a big drop next week. Paul, Rome wasn't built in a day. Just vitamin P. We talk about patience a lot. Just be patient, and I promise you. For me, the fact that the oats, I didn't need sugar. I didn't need maple syrup. I didn't need honey. I didn't need blueberries. Shows to me how much my palate has changed, because I could not have eaten those without any additional sweetness. Right. Have I said too much about it? What do you reckon, Richard?
No, I think it's fantastic. I think it's all information, and it just shows basically how impactful some of these compounds are that we believe to be beneficial. And look, make no bones about it. Glucose is essential. We do need it for life, but our bodies make all of the glucose that it needs via a process called gluconeogenesis. So gluco being glucose, neo new, and genesis, the creation of. We all have the ability to do this. When we abstain from carbs, we upregulate this ability to quite a degree. And also we upregulate the transporters and enzymes involved with doing so, the monocarboxylate transporters and the enzymes within the cells and the muscle and so on and so forth, ACAT, BDH and SCOT. A teaspoon of sugar is all we need in circulation at any one time. And even if we look at, just go beyond general health and well-being, and we look at athletic performance, for example, I work within the athletic community, as you know, and it's heavily carb driven. So what we quite often see is people who are actively fit and trying to be healthy, consuming things like oats and bread and pasta, muesli in the morning with a banana. So sugar with your sugar. It just doesn't make any sense. But we're told and led to believe that this is what fuels our workouts. And to some degree, this is true. We need glucose, but it's not for the storage form of glucose, which is glycogen. So we don't need muscle glycogen stores per se to fuel our workout. We need blood glucose, because when blood glucose drops, it flicks the switch in the brain, and it basically leads us to becoming hypoglycemic. And this is where we struggle with an endurance effort or a strength effort, so on and so forth. So the brain switches this off. In the athletic world, we call it bonking. Or hitting the wall in running, and it happens because blood glucose drops to a level which isn't acceptable to maintain steady blood glucose, and we've proven this in many tests. Our good friend Dr. Professor Noakes he's studied over 400 clinical trials and research papers. He's the most studied person in the athletic community in regards to looking at carbohydrate versus fat and ketones. And he, in fact, was the person that invented carb loading. So he invented this. He was the godfather of carb loading, if you like. He's the reason that all of us put these carbs in before we run the marathon and so on and so forth. And in 2015, he changed his position on this. He was funded by Gatorade to look at the research in regards to athletic performance and glucose. But he never looked at fat. And despite being an incredible athlete, running hundreds of miles a week, he developed type 2 diabetes later in his life, which now he has reversed by becoming low carb and ketogenic. And he quite literally wrote the book, The Law of Running. And there's a video on YouTube. The rest of the book is fantastic, by the way. But he's been filmed on YouTube, tearing out those pages in the book that talk about carb loading. We don't need it because we make all the glucose. So glucose is essential, but we don't want too much. Too much will lead to oxidative stress, insulin resistance, inflammation. It'll lead to other issues in regards to energy production, cell damage, which we can get in later. I can see the questions are building up, so we can circle back to this. But excessive amounts of sugar are a poison to the body. And this is the short. So, we've talked a little bit about the science. Excessive amounts of glucose in the blood is a toxin. This is why the body pulls glucose from the blood and stores it in the muscle. It's to save your life. This is why you store muscle glycogen. It's to save your life, because excessive amounts of glucose in the blood is toxic. So why do we do it? And the fact is that we do not need to do it. And I think, that presentation Wow. I mean, that's in a diabetic range. The interesting thing, though, Steve, is that if you notice, your insulin sensitivity is incredible because you've spiked the insulin. And then it's come straight back down, which people would regard as being a bad thing. But this shows insulin sensitivity. What we find in groups of people who have become insulin resistant is it'll spike, but it will maintain. It'll create more of a mountain, if you like. It'll do this, and it'll stay elevated for a prolonged period of time and come down slowly. The problem with this, up and down, perfect. So what we find in a lot of people who consume excessive amounts of carbs is that their blood glucose is higher generally. It doesn't spike so much, which gives them the misillusion that they're doing well because their blood glucose isn't spiking and doing this. But that's a fallacy because the blood glucose is higher in the beginning, and it's sort of done this, and it's tabletopped, if you like, and it stays consistently high for a prolonged period of time before it starts to come down. Now, the reason that this is bad is that when insulin is elevated, as we say, it breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cell. And it also blocks a hormone called hormone-sensitive lipase, which is the hormone that we need to burn fat for fuel. It's biologically impossible to burn body fat when insulin is elevated. So if one were to consume that bowl of porridge and then think, well, now I've consumed carb, which is my energy, now I'm going to go for a run and burn some fat with that energy, then you were grossly undereducated or misunderstood. That insulin response will make it biologically impossible for you to burn that body fat until insulin has dropped back down to a point where it can now elicit that response and allow glucagon to take over and allow hormone-sensitive lipase to break these bonds on the glycerol backbone to burn this body fat. So there is quite literally no benefit to excessive amounts of carbohydrates. So I think that's a fantastic experiment. And just to add one more thing to this before we get onto the questions, one of the things in the chat there, Steve, that I've noticed, they mentioned something about potentially testing other sweeteners, which is something I think will be an incredible test. And I think maybe we should make a list of artificial sweeteners, the ones that you and I know are detrimental. And I think what it may be worth doing is testing other ones that I tell people are the better ones to take to see what sort of response. And I'm not saying that we should all be taking these, but I believe that there are a group of sweeteners which are natural, which do not elicit an insulin response or will elicit a far lower response, which I believe may be more beneficial, especially in the transition towards a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle. But fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Great
well,
test.
And one thing, thank you. I'm going to say, you see, that shows your confidence because you're saying, test it, test what I'm saying. And that's exactly actually the whole point of what continual glucose monitors and keto mojos are all about. Don't listen to us. Don't listen to everybody. Do it yourself. Have a banana and be surprised. Have some oats and be surprised.
100%.
You can do it on yourself. But I do think that, the other thing, and I'm going to plug my book one more time because it's nearly coming out, the second edition, is I've tried to add more of these things that people don't talk about. Like I say, the volume of blood and the concentration is therefore different between a man and a woman. Also body variation and just so many other things that we could talk about. But that's great. Let's get to the questions because we've got tons. Thank you for the questions. Don't forget super chats, move you up the queue and also help the channel, which is really good. Put a Q before your question so we can spot it easily. MJ, is there any benefit in changing to MCT C8 in coffee instead of butter before a workout or in general?
Yeah, for sure. Butter's fantastic. Butter's natural. It's a natural fat, and it is one of the healthiest fats for you. Healthier, again, would be things like tallow, lard, and ghee. Tallow being the best, I think, at least certainly one of them. Ghee is clarified butter, so it's a purer form. All of these are fantastic, and I'm not against butter by any means. But in regards to this question in particular for a workout, MCT works differently to longer chain fatty acids, and I'll explain in brief terms. So when we consume butter, for example, which is a longer chain triglyceride, a long chain fatty acid, we ingest this, it goes into the digestive system, it goes into the small intestine, where it binds to chylomicrons, which are sort of like cholesterol type particles, if you like, in simple terms. Then this is transported through the lymphatic system, and then further on from the lymphatic system, it's sent to the liver, where it will enter beta oxidation, i.e. fat burning to produce energy, or it will continue on its journey through beta oxidation and create ketones, and the end result, again, is energy. And that's fantastic. This is what you and I, Steve, do every day via beta oxidation and ketone production through longer chain fatty acids, which is fantastic. MCTs, however, which are natural, they are found in nature in every animal product, goat's milk, for example, and coconuts and so on and so forth. But MCTs, it basically means that they have less chains of carbons, which means that they're processed a lot quicker. So they're medium chain triglycerides, typically between 8 to 10 carbon atoms. Some will call 12 a medium chain. I do not personally. That's a talk for another day. But C8, which is the shorter chain, is that's one of my talks for the Richard Smith bingo cards, by the way. Anyway, we'll get on to this later. The MCTs, they work very differently. So that we ingest them, they go to the small intestine, but instead of going through this chylomicron process in the lymphatic system and then to the liver, they are sent directly to the liver via the hepatic portal vein, where they are instantly converted into ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. So whether you live a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle or not, pure C8-MCT will convert into ketones regardless. Does that mean that you don't have to be keto? Not necessarily. I mean, you can live a low-carb or even a high-carb lifestyle. Ketones still confer huge benefits, and we'll elicit just a few just to appease people who are new to the channel, because I'm quite conscious that we have lots of new listeners. Ketones are highly beneficial. They're beneficial to the brain, the body, and the heart. They increase mechanical efficiency of the heart. They increase blood flow, blocks inflammation via NLRP3 inflammasome. They level out the glutamate to GABA ratio, which means it leads to combating things like anxiety and depression and so on and so forth. And they also increase insulin sensitivity. So irrespective of living a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle, ketones in the body will increase insulin sensitivity, which basically means that you benefit from a lower state of insulin, even if you were to consume carbohydrate. I'm not telling you to consume carbohydrate, but my point to this is how powerful the ketones are. So in regards to health in general, MCTs are going to be more beneficial for those benefits and the ketone production. That's not to say that the longer chains are not beneficial. They're beneficial for other means, but especially for a workout, C8, because of its ability to convert into ketones instantly, it will elicit far more energy for your workout. So C8 in your coffee, ideally, I wouldn't put it in coffee at all. Talk for another day. I think, we can get into coffee again also. The MCT, MJ, if you are using this and drinking coffee, I do have another alternative. I've just produced a chocolate version. So it does contain cocoa powder and stevia, but it's ideal for adding to hot water. So it makes a hot chocolate, if you like. So you can add it to coffee, but if you are looking to reduce coffee, then this is by far the lesser of two evils. That said, caffeine works incredibly well as an ergogenic aid, and caffeine does work synergistically with the ketones. They ramp up ketone production, allow us to perform at a higher rate, which is why athletes, whether they're carb or keto, will use things like exogenous ketones and things like MCT. So C8 MCT for workouts is going to be far more beneficial.
Brilliant. Okay, so just to tell people, we're now getting to questions that were posted at 7 o'clock when we started. We give full answers, and that's why I think people like asking questions. If you don't get answered, just next week come on early or do a super chat, and you'll definitely get answered. We do try to answer every question, but we like to answer them fully. Luke, thanks for putting your question at the front there. Hi, guys. Do you have any experience with grounding sheets and pillows? Absolutely. I have a grounding sheet. We don't use a grounding pillow because we've got a grounding sheet. Grounding per se, just getting out and getting your feet on the grass, on the dirt, is a very good thing. First thing in the morning, particularly good if you can do that. Shown to be very beneficial. Less clumping of your red blood cells, if you want it in very layman's terms. but yes, we have no bananas. Yes, we have a grounding sheet in the house, and it's brilliant. And Janie's very on it. She tests it every so often to make sure that it is still working, because you can get a little tester. And interestingly enough, she stopped doing it on a regular basis, and then the other day she thought, I don't think this is working. I feel a bit different. When she tested it, it wasn't working, so we sent it back, and the manufacturer said we might have used a detergent or something on it that meant it was faulty. But the point being, she intuitively knew that there was something up with it, so I think it probably works. I'm going to move on. MJ, you've had a long answer, so we're going to give you a short answer to the next one, which is beef is 95% of my daily diet. I'm looking to change to mutton. For the people not in the UK, that's lamb. I can get 2 whole sheep for £340. Thoughts? That's about 45 kilograms. I've been carnivore for 3.5 years. Well, I think, lamb is fantastic. Mutton is much older lamb, but yes, I still think it's fantastic.
Yep, I agree. And to keep it super simple and short, lamb, I believe, and I think Steve agrees also, that it is more beneficial in regards to B vitamin profile, omega-3 profile, and amino acid profile in general. That's not to say that beef isn't, but lamb is fantastic. And the older the lamb, the more nutrients that it holds. 45 kilograms is a lot. So 340 pound divided by that works out at £7.50 a day, I think, based on consuming a kilogram of lamb each day. So, I mean, that is an absolute bargain. A lot of people may consume considerably less than this. So, I mean, it could last you as much as 90 days. So if we add that in and factor that into the cost saving of shopping, then it is incredibly low price, I think, for one of the highest quality foods available on the planet.
Yeah, and I think which reminds me of one of my favorite jokes. It's terrible to tell you this. I don't think I should say it, but anyway, if an older lady gets dressed up, sometimes there's an expression where you say, "Look at that! That's mutton dressed up as lamb," which isn't a particularly nice thing to say. But I heard my friend say, "Look at that! Mutton dressed up as mutton." So I thought that was quite funny. Anyway, right. Carol there, Carol Millington has asked, and we've already said this. Hope you can test artificial sweeteners in drinks. Exactly what we're going to do, Carol, and thanks for the support. Stacey Janey, I've been trying to go carnivore over the last year, but have terrible carb and sugar cravings. I'm not usually able to last more than a couple of days without messing up. Any tips to help with this?
Yeah, fantastic question. This is incredibly common, and I think it's safe to say that if we're coming from a diet of high carbohydrate consumption in general, then all of us will suffer with cravings, because sugar is a drug and it's more addictive than heroin. Arguably, I always get shot down when I say that, because it's. But we know this from testing. Rats were fed glucose, heroin, and cocaine, and they would work a lot harder for the sugar than they did for any other drug. So it's. Again, it is very much an individual thing, but it is addictive, highly addictive. There are a number of things that we can do. Incremental changes. So I do believe that some people confer more benefit through gravitating incrementally. Confer a benefit. That's probably number 10 off the list by now. And I'll explain this bingo thing later in the day. But it is a journey. We're all on a different journey. I'm carnivore. I didn't wake up being carnivore. I gravitated into this way of eating, this way of living via low carb, and then became sort of dirty keto, clean keto, standard keto, and so on and so forth, until I decided to gravitate deeper into more plant-based, animal-based over plant-based. And I have tried plant-based also, by the way. Now, just for those who are listening, I know I'm aware that we do have an awful lot of new subscribers, so apologies to the followers who have heard me mention this a number of times. I used to be clinically obese and type 2 diabetic. I suffered with chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, daily debilitating migraines would make me blind, for which I was on 3 different types of medication. And in my mid to late 20s, I could barely walk a flight of stairs without stopping or being severely out of breath. I gravitated into more plant-based and then eventually becoming more carnivore, but I was ketogenic. And that was a result a number of years ago. I went on to become a professional athlete and British and European champion as a pro. So I went on to become number 1 in my category in Europe. And now as a test, I've gravitated into endurance sports. So hence the reason I'm considerably smaller. Now, the reason I've said this is that I'm a sugar addict. I'm a sugar addict. It's I'm highly addicted to sugar, and we all are, because we are essentially all drug addicts in that respect. There are things that you can do. One of the main factors for me is neurotransmitter production. If we look at things like serotonin and dopamine, we're hardwired to chase these neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters that we make are made from amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine. But in order to, the saying is usually bake the cake, but we're going to use fry the steak. So in order to fry our steak, we need other ingredients. We need to add maybe some butter, tallow, lard, or ghee, for example. So in order to make these neurotransmitters, we need other ingredients or cofactors. And these cofactors are things like zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin B3, B6, B12, so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing with a standard diet, i.e. consuming plants or excessive amounts of carbohydrates, particularly from oats, by the way, oats are high in lectins and they're high in another compound called phytic acid. Both of these, via different mechanisms, have been shown to block the absorption of these cofactors. So basically, in simple terms, is if we eat oats, bread, pasta, rice, with some protein that contains all of these nutrients, it's possible for the lectins and phytates within this compound to block as much as 100% of the nutrients found within the animal proteins. By doing so, it blocks our body's ability to make these neurotransmitters. It blocks our body's ability to convert tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine into our neurotransmitters. Now, why is this a problem? Because without the neurotransmitters, we are hardwired to chase the dopamine and serotonin fix. So we look for other means to do so. And other means to do this is via sugar or carbohydrate, because when we consume sugar, sugar will block the prefrontal cortex in the brain. It blocks our brain's ability to tell us not to do dumb things, make dumb decisions, but it will elicit a dopamine response. So we get the hit. The more sugar that we consume, the less this hit works, and therefore the more sugar we consume to get the hit, but the more we consume, the more it downregulates these dopamine receptors, and every time we need more sugar to get this response. So that's one mechanism. The other is, again, via carbohydrate will elicit an insulin response. Insulin will drive or pull all of the amino acids out of circulation to drive into the cell, except for tryptophan. Now, tryptophan is what we need to make serotonin. So having more tryptophan in the blood will allow the body then to create serotonin, giving us a serotonin bump. So every time we eat sugar, we have a dopamine bump and we have a serotonin bump. When we do this, we feel good. This is why when we're sad, we eat something. When we're depressed or sad, we eat something because it gives us an instant kick. But what happens soon after? 10 minutes after we've consumed it, well, we feel pretty shitty again because we've come back down. So then we do it again. And then this is where the problems begin. So the key to this, first and foremost, is abstaining from those anti-nutrients, i.e. the phytic acid, the lectins, the wheat germ agglutinin, the phytohemagglutinin, so on and so forth. And typically these are found in vegetables, grains, and fruits, for example. So by doing that, we can now elicit these responses to make the neurotransmitters. So now we're no longer feeling the need or that craving to drive for that sugar in order to drive this response. When we gravitate deeper, the ketone production will also balance out glutamate and GABA. Now, when we are in a level or state of insulin resistance and oxidative stress, glutamate is increased and it suppresses GABA. And think of these things as a seesaw, and we need them to be in a balance. Ketones will balance this ratio, and glutamate is a neurotransmitter that we don't want to be overexcited, because again, this will lead to all of those issues I mentioned, and depression and anxiety, and again will fuel further our cravings. So by eating a low carb ketogenic lifestyle, this can help combat these problems. Fats will also elicit a response that will block a hormone called CCK, cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin, when it's elicited, will tell us that we're full and satisfied, and this will help blunt that. Again, saturated fats, amino acids will also elicit a BDNF response, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This will also help balance those neurotransmitters. and help us increase inhibition or inhibition control, inhibitory control. So having these within the body will allow us to combat those cravings. And the next thing we can do is sunlight. So sunlight directly to the eye early in the morning or late in the day will increase a hormone called melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocyte stimulating hormone will also elicit these responses that will allow us to combat the cravings. So there are some, I know it sounds super simple, but removing these compounds that are eliciting these responses and blocking those cofactors allow us, therefore, to combat the sugar cravings with a bit of sun, some grounding, and you can also add in glutamate, which is an amino acid, just a teaspoon before eating, i.e. when you get sugar cravings. And this can also help combat that sugar craving further. But I think the key to this is understanding what is eliciting these responses and these cravings. And it always comes back to things like neurotransmitter production, which when we live a ketogenic, low carb, ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle, we can balance and we can restore this balance incredibly quickly, which therefore will allow us to go on and combat these cravings. So there is a little bit of grinning and bearing, but you need to go through this. But use this YouTube channel, use our private school group, use friends and family, use people who are going to be positive, people who can be a soundboard that you can bounce off, and also try not to keep these compounds at home. If they're not there, then when you wake up at 2 a.m. with a craving, if those things are not there, then you can't consume them. Try to replace them in the early days with things maybe like Greek yogurt, for example. Yes, there's a little bit of carbohydrate in Greek yogurt, but I do find that this is a fantastic segue for many people as they gravitate deeper into the carnivore ketogenic way of living. And quite often, I think you can do a test to see if you are craving or if you are actually hungry. So your body wants protein and fat. So think of an egg or cheese, for example. So next time that you feel hungry and you can't tell if it's a craving or if it's hunger, go to the fridge, pull out an egg, a boiled egg, or some cheese, and put it to your mouth and think, do you want to consume this compound? If the answer is yes, your body intuitively knows that it's because it needs the protein and fat. If it's no, if you don't want the cheese or you don't want the egg, then you're not hungry. It's a craving. So therefore, we can implement those other changes and help combat those things later down the line. So that's the short answer.
Yeah. Could you say again? I didn't get it all. Right. Yeah, I think one of the things I just want to make people clear of, you can join our school community. I have put a link in the chat, and it's just full of like-minded people that will help you and support you. So I think if you haven't got friends that understand it, or even friends and family who are anti what you're doing, then that's why we do things like the school community, just so you can get feedback from some like-minded weirdos like us. We're all weird, aren't we? Because we're doing something for our health and not listening to the telly. Right. A fantastic super chat, which is very, very kind of you, Tanya. It's really appreciated. Hello, my UK Info Dream Team. Richard, when will your electrolytes ship to Toronto, Canada? 19 months carnivore at 56. Too many brilliant changes to list. Brilliant. Thank you too. That's great, Tanya. If you have a really good success story, then I'd love you to come on to the YouTube channel when we interviewed. So don't forget to drop me an email at zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. In fact, that goes for anybody that's got a story they want to share. Zero spelled out, ZERO. Carb, CARB, coach.
You have to think about that.
Yeah, I just I didn't want to say carbs, actually. Don't trigger anyone. Zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. But anyway, Tanya, thank you. So Richard, are you going to ship to Toronto, Canada?
Tanya, thank you so much for your kind words. I think you need to change the UK to the world. No, but in all seriousness, thank you for the support. Massively appreciated. Look, unfortunately, we are having major issues shipping to Canada. As you know, my electrolytes were recently regarded as #1 in the world. Dr. Abs reviewed some of the top electrolytes in the world. And this is irrespective of being low carb, ketogenic or carnivore. And mine came out #1. there's a fantastic video explaining why ratios are really important, quality of ingredients, so on and so forth. But one of the ingredients that I add to the electrolytes that I make that makes them unique is a compound called astaxanthin. Now, astaxanthin is a compound that is a true antioxidant. It's not a pro-oxidant. When we look at antioxidants from vegetables, for example, they are not antioxidants, they are pro-oxidants. And the reason that we believe that they are antioxidants is because they elicit a response via a pathway called the NRF2 pathway, which seems to confer a benefit, but it doesn't. I won't bore you with this now because we have so many questions and I'll go off for another 20 minutes. I will be out of time. But basically, antioxidants from plants do not exist. They're pro-oxidants. And this is a fact. And you can check this via any search engine. But astaxanthin is a true antioxidant because it does not elicit this response via the NRF2 pathway. Now, I add astaxanthin to my electrolytes. It's a natural compound. It comes from things like salmon and flamingos. It's what gives them their distinctive color. It also comes from algae. But these are, this compound is incredibly beneficial. It's 800 times stronger than coenzyme Q10, 550 times more potent than vitamin E, over 800 times stronger than vitamin C, and so on and so forth. With over 1,000 clinical and preclinical trials, astaxanthin has been shown to increase health, well-being, help with thyroid problems, help with athletic performance, and so on and so forth. We could go into this. We could do an entire podcast just on this topic. But the astaxanthin I use is a real version. Many claim to use astaxanthin, but they don't actually use a natural version. They use a synthetic version, which does not work, at least not as good. My version is 21 times more potent. And to my knowledge, I'm the only person in the UK that's licensed to use this version of astaxanthin. So if others claim to be using it, they may very well have the active form. But when I checked last time, I was the only person in the UK that was licensed to use this. In there lies the problem. Astaxanthin, in many countries, is not allowed over a certain amount. And believe it or not, neither is potassium in Canada. I think potassium in Canada, when it goes past a certain point, is banned. And my electrolytes contain a lot of potassium because potassium is super important. But because the serving of the potassium and the astaxanthin goes above the limit that Canada will allow, my products are not allowed in Canada, which is absolutely heartbreaking. We can ship to the States. So if you have the means, Tanya, of shipping to the States and then receiving them from the States, then that could be a workaround, which is what many clients in Canada do. The price of shipping isn't cheap, but if you compare it to the cost of things like Element, mine are considerably cheaper. And as many of you are aware, Element has been in the press lately for various reasons. My product is unique and different. I've claimed it to be the best on the market for quite some time for a number of reasons. I'm not going to put anyone else's product down, but mine is the best. Anyway, but it's if you ship into the States, even the cost of shipping may negate the extra cost compared to things like Element, which I know are predominant in the States. So it may be a means to get it in there. But Tanya, I wish I had a different answer for you, as you're kind enough to donate towards the super chat. I wish it was a quick fix and I could click my fingers and get it to you quite easily, but there are incredible issues with Canada and shipping the electrolytes in particular. But I am constantly working on workarounds. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Luke, the missus just commented on your suit and tie before the video started and said you both look amazing and smart. Oh, yes, we both look smart. Now then, all right. Zinc316, I am trying priming for the last 2 days. Sleep and mood improved. I'm starting to wonder if I've been under eating. Have either of you done priming? If so, any tips? Yes, I've done priming. And I did that, I think, right near the beginning of my journey, maybe 3 years ago. So I've been carnivore just over 5. So about 3 years ago, I did priming, and I was under eating. That's what it revealed to me. I didn't do priming for any other reason than like the continual glucose monitor. I wanted to do an experiment, and it really worked for me. And it works for many people, but for other people, it doesn't work. So you have to be careful about your background, how you feel about eating, your relationship with food. But if you feel pretty confident that you could try it, my tip is to listen to your body, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, and do what you should do. when you're priming, 3 meals a day plus snacks if you're hungry in the first week. And by the second week, and this is how it works for some people, by the second week, you never want to eat again in the rest of your life, which is such a big change for people that do calorie restriction who want to eat every single second of their life. And it does seem to reset some people's hormones. Right, there is a caveat. It doesn't work for everybody. And for people it doesn't work for, it doesn't work really well at all. So you have to make sure that you're sort of, no pun intended, a prime candidate for it. If you have had eating disorders and stuff like that, it might not work, and you may need to sort of have a bit of coaching to make sure that everything's fine. But my tip is to just be mindful of it and try and listen to your body in the first week, particularly. Eat when you are hungry and stop when you're full is such a mantra, but in priming in particular, it's really, really important. Don't add lots and lots of fat. Try not to have snacks with dairy, for instance, or yogurt, or things that are not even carnivore. I think if you can stick to beef and lamb, that's really good. If you don't like beef and lamb, then you can try chicken. Poultry's okay, but and pork is all right. But I just think we need to be mindful. But for most people that do it, they really enjoy it and it works. But for other people, it's not been a great thing. Right, we're going to get on to Dennis. For Richard, when taking taurine powder and also zinc to increase stomach acid, how much to take with each meal, before, during, after, and how much water to dilute the taurine?
Fantastic question, Dennis. Thank you. Look, it is going to be different for everyone. It is going to depend on your requirement. I take it prior to eating, and I try to take it with as little water as you can. For digestion, we don't want to dilute stomach acid excessively. In regards to serving size, it is going to be different for everyone. I'd say a minimum of maybe 40 milligrams of zinc and maybe 1,000 milligrams of taurine. But experiment. You know, there's no reason you can't go higher. See how that works. Eat your meal. Try not to drink anything, at least excessively, for an hour, maybe an hour and a half after eating, because this will dilute stomach acid. I know it's difficult when you are eating, but for those who are suffering with digestive issues, drinking too soon after eating a meal can cause problems. But experiment with the amount. Begin there and see how it works. But as you decide, to gravitate deeper into the journey and this production becomes more natural, the zinc and taurine is found naturally in the animal proteins, but you just need the stomach acid to elicit that response to release these compounds in the first place. But adding these in can confer huge benefits initially to increase the stomach acid as we gravitate a little deeper into the journey.
Great answer. And taurine in interventional trials, that's where they put it in, see what happens, take it out, see what happens, put it back in, take it out, to see if it really is that working. That it does do those things. It increases your stomach acid, it increases stomach emptying efficiency, and also bile production. So taurine is a fantastic supplement. But also, don't forget, it's in animal products. You are eating amino acids as well. Right. I don't know how to pronounce that name. I think it's Saya. But anyway, I heard Rich talking about aluminium foil having negative effects. I use it for oven baking my meat. It gets delicious and leaves my oven clean. What are the negative effects and what are the alternatives?
Yeah, look, this is highly controversial, but the aluminium, when heated within the foil, aluminium can be toxic to the body, particularly in regards to neurological problems. You guys have heard me mention a number of times about the compound that Stephen and I have removed coffee for. And for this reason, we've removed it because of the neurological, especially muscular neurological damage. But you don't want to be damaging your DNA and you don't want to be causing neurological damage. And this is what happens from the compounds that are released within aluminium foil, for example. Cast iron is what I cook in. It's a lot more difficult to clean, especially because I tend not to add any fats to cooking. But you can cover it with another aluminium pot or something. But foil is ideally not preferenced. If you can, remove the foil, I think that it will confer benefits in the long term. All of these things are like the 1%, if you like. I think the diet in general is the biggest lever that we can pull. So imagine we have a whole set of levers in front of us that we can pull. Diet is I believe, well over 90%, maybe even 95% of general health and well-being. And then we have other factors like, working out, for example, hitting the gym, training. And then we have other factors like meditation, grounding, yoga, sunlight to the eyes. Sunlight's really important. And then as we gravitate deeper down the journey of becoming ketogenic and carnivore, we almost become, what's called biohacking. I hate that term, by the way. But anyway, we do look at all of these other levers to pull. And these are levers that we can pull. Coffee, for example, is something that only recently Stephen and I have taken out because of the acrylamide. For many of you who are drinking coffee, this is absolutely fine. But Stephen and I were drinking excessive amounts. We decided to take it out because we were suffering with a few issues, and all of these issues went away. I won't bore you with those things now, unless we run out of questions, which I don't think we're going to do.
No.
But basically, there's all of these levers to pull. And aluminium, removing aluminium foil or tin foil is another lever to pull. So it's a small percentage, but it's going to prevent buildup of these toxic compounds and help negate any negative effect of neurological problems within the brain.
That's great. That's a really good answer there. So we are going to move on. As you say, we can't answer everything. Charles Mail, good morning, fellas from Adelaide, Australia. I have Dave Mack tonight with my story. I love listening to you two. Love your work. Carnivore Surfer Charlie. Charlie, again, the offer is, if you want to come on my channel, spread your success around these parts. That'd be great. Who's this fella? Dr. Abs? What's this about? Rich, do you think your keto bars will cause a much smaller rise in serum glucose on Steve's monitor?
Who's this fella?
Right, Dr. Abs. He's probably got a great six-pack or something with a name like that.
Dr. Abs, one of the most knowledgeable people in this space, I think, Steve.
Yes.
You'll agree. Yeah, great question. So again, I'm carnivore. I do produce keto bars. They're not for the carnivore market, but they are designed for the low-carb ketogenic market. They are designed as replacements. And by that, what I mean is, if someone is coming back to the sugar addiction thing, if someone wants to gravitate and consume less carbs and less, or reduce the amount of damaging compounds they're consuming, the keto bars that I produce, I believe to be the best in the world. They're made from glycerol, which is a type of fat. So that's the sweetener that we use in there. So there's no erythritol or stevia used in there. So there's going to be no response from the stevia or erythritol because it's not in there. In regards to carb, they're incredibly low. So I just expect no glucose response. If there is, it'll be minimum. And again, heavily reduced in things like oxalates and lectins. So they're an ideal tool for someone gravitating into this market to implement. But I think that's another fantastic test. And look, I believe in the products I produce. I don't consume these products very often anymore. I consume them now and again if I want a treat per se. But again, I'm a strict carnivore. But I will eat these because I know exactly what's in them because I've made them. And I believe them to be unique. But I've got no problem at all. In fact, I'm going to make a note of this. I'm going to send Stephen some of the bars for you to test, along with a few of the other products, the electrolytes that do contain things like stevia in the flavored version. We do have an unflavored version. But I'm going to send a whole host of products, and I'll be super interested to see the results because, as I say, I don't want you guys to take our word for it. In fact, we should always question what we say. It's not questioning that has led us as a species to be so unwell within this space because we just accept the science. We shouldn't accept the science. We should question the science. Perform these tests and these things on ourselves and see how each diet and lifestyle reacts within the body and whether it confers a benefit or not. So don't take our word. Go away and do your own research also.
Okay, yes. I'm laughing because critical thinking is in short supply. It made me think of a true story happened yesterday in a supermarket because I had to buy a banana and oats, right? And there was a lady, and she asked for a carrier bag, and then she asked for another plastic bag, and she was double bagging all this all of her food into these plastic bags, and the shop assistant said, "Oh, you can't double bag stuff. That's not really allowed. That's really bad for the planet." She said, "But if I don't double bag it, if I don't have two bags, then they're going to break and all that stuff is going to go everywhere." And she said, well, there's a way around this. Don't double bag. Just have 2 bags and put half in one and half in the other. And the lady said, that's exactly the same amount of bags. It is. Where's the thinking? Anyway, right. 2 super chats. Thank you, Cruz. $5. Thanks for doing this. And Michelle McDermott, at $19.99. That's really kind of you. What supplement for hair loss? 7 months carnivore, major hair loss, eating more fat, now increasing protein, not one cheat day. This started 5 months in the hair loss, I'm assuming. What do you think, Rich? I mean, I always think more protein actually rather than fat, but what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think there are lots of contributing factors. I think you're doing right is also with increasing the fat, but hair loss, when we gravitate into this way of living, is common. It generally clears up after a short period of time, but it's usually to do with fasting. So i.e., maybe consuming 1 meal a day. And the reason for this is that the body needs time to adapt. 7 months is fantastic, but it can take as many as 12 months to fully adapt into this, and everyone is different. But it's excessive fasting that negates the body's ability to heal and repair, and it puts it into a stressed state. So what I'd do, which is super simple and free, first and foremost, is eat 3 meals a day. So come away from the fasting in general. Make sure that you're consuming enough protein, and as a gauge, we want a minimum, of maybe 1 gram per pound of body weight. Women can usually get away with 0.9, but there's no reason that we can't consume more grams of protein than required. Protein is, they are the building blocks, and we need to consume these in conjunction with the fatty acids, the fats that nature provides. So implement 3 meals throughout the day. Again, coming back to what we mentioned earlier in regards to taurine and zinc, this can help the stomach acid and increase the body's ability to absorb these nutrients. So you could implement those. We could look at things like biotin and so on and so forth. But what I'd suggest there is implement some organ meats. There's 2 amino acids which don't get the airtime that I believe that they deserve. B12 and folate, B9 get most of the airtime. B2, riboflavin, B1, thiamine, they are incredibly important to the body, especially when it comes to things like methylation and hormone production. And again, this is probably a talk for another day, but adding in a little bit of beef liver or lamb liver contains way more vitamin B2 than eating just meat. So for an example, a piece of beef typically would contain, on an average person's diet, maybe 0.2 to 0.5 milligrams. And typically many of us require 2 to 3 milligrams. So as much as 10 times the amount. So try putting in some organ meats, beef liver or lamb liver. You can mince this with your ground beef. So if you don't like them, then you can mince them in there and you don't even have to taste them. If you can't consume organ meats, maybe look at supplementing with a desiccant supplementation from that perspective. But look, organ meats are ridiculously cheap, and these supplements are fantastic. B7 and NAD+, yeah, good point. B vitamins are crucially important, and gravitating into this, Abs mentions NAD+. Ketones increase NAD+ naturally. So as we gravitate into this, maybe, looking at C8 or exogenous ketones, for example, or NAD+ injections, which is a course that I'm attending with Dr. Abs shortly. So I'll be brimming with super knowledge to allow me to elaborate.
Is that in December by any chance?
Yes,
1st of December?
I think so. Yeah.
So you're there. I think,
Fantastic.
yeah. Wow, that's great. Right, I jumped in because we've got a minute to go. Sorry, guys, if we didn't get to your question. Like I say, with the super chats, they do take priority because they're supporting the channel. Yes, it is a way for us to do that, to generate some income. We're very straight with what we're doing here. If we could answer every question, we would answer every single question free. But we also are consumers. So if we watch other videos and other people answering questions and they don't give a full answer, or they just refer you to go and look at some video, that's not how we do it. That's not how we roll. If you want to see an extra 30 minutes, then you can join us at school. There is a link in the chat to come and join, and you will get a live question and answer every single Monday night. you will get an extra 30 minutes on a Sunday night, which we're just about to go and do. So you could click on that link, join school, and join and see the next 30 minutes. We're also expanding how many lives and things we're doing within the calendar. So I'll be doing a weekly diabetes thing, very similar to my continual glucose monitor, and maybe even doing some live blood analysis where you can just put in the week before some of your bloods, and we'll have a look through them and just talk about what they mean, just so you can learn about that, or maybe even go through studies and tell you how to look at those. So that's us on YouTube. So we will hopefully see you over in school. So thank you very much for attending. Really nice to see everybody.
Yep. Thank you all. See you soon.